love, more joy, everything.
It's inspired young people.
Inspiration comes from within you. When you clear out the garbage that's in your mind, you then create space for something better, more beautiful to come in.
Let's have life and have it more abundantly.
I say yes.
It's like taking a workshop. I get to be in my pajamas.
We have a very active imagination, which is why it's important to learn how to harness it and then point it in the direction you want to go.
I listen to your show every day.
It's time now for Living Your Inspired Life with Susan Burrell. Susan is no-nonsense, inspirational, motivational, and fun.
This is positive talk radio.
Practical wisdom for everyday life.
It's a gift you give yourself.
Now, here's Susan.
And welcome to Living Your Inspired Life. You're listening to News Talk 1590 KVTA. And I always like to remind everybody at the top of the show that if you miss anything during this show, or you tune in for the first time, you go, wow, I really like what Susan's talking about. You can go to livingyourinspiredlife.org and tune in, tune up, and develop your power perspective so that you can live the life you were born to live. And part of what we do here on Living Your Inspired Life is we bring on inspirational people that are doing amazing things either in the world or in the local community. And also what we do is we support programs that are about empowering people to live their inspired life. One of the things that's occurring right now is something called the Season for Nonviolence. It started on January 30th. It goes to April 4th. It's 64 days of becoming aware of how we individually and then collectively live life in a way that brings in more peace as opposed to violence. And that means becoming aware of how we individually operate in this kind of unconscious way of being violent. And often that happens within ourselves, in the places where there is a lack of self-forgiveness or a condemnation, self-condemnation. So what I like to do is bring in the affirmation of the day during the Season for Nonviolence. So today's affirmation is regarding harmony. In the Season for Nonviolence, we learn to practice nonviolence one step at a time, one choice at a time, one day at a time. This is how each of us in our own way move the world in the direction of peace. So the thought for today is harmony. Choosing not to engage in any form of gossip contributes to harmony. Now that's interesting. Choosing not to engage in any form of gossip contributes to harmony. Choosing to see the good in others rather than the faults. Oh boy. Choosing to see the good in others rather than the faults leads to peaceful relationships. So today I invite you to focus on harmony and how does that show up in your inner world and therefore in your outer world. And if you want to learn more about the Season for Nonviolence, you can go to agnt.org, Association for Global New Thought, agnt.org, and find out more about the season. And again, it goes until April 4th, and we'll bring you more about that. So back to this place of living your inspired life, uncovering and supporting people in our local community in the Ventura County area who do amazing work. I want to welcome on the show today, Tobi Jo Greene. Tobi, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Susan.
So the thing that I'm just going to talk about you like you're not here right now.
Okay.
But the thing that I love about Tobi is this is a passionate woman who has committed her life to empowering women. And she's been doing it for many years at the level of as girls mature into their womanhood. And so you have this workshop. It's called the Girls Empowerment Workshop. And you've started in local small organizations, but now it's expanded into the school system. So will you talk a little bit about the purpose of the Girls Empowerment Workshop first, and then we'll talk about where it's going?
Sure. I guess I will start by telling you what the mission of the Girls Empowerment Workshop is.
Awesome.
The mission of the Girls Empowerment Workshop is to educate, empower, and inspire girls by raising awareness, developing communication skills, and cultivating self-respect. And it's an 8 to 10 week workshop, and we work with junior high and high school girls, and each week we cover a different subject. And we start out with connecting, like you were saying, with harmony and the way we treat other women in our lives, and participating in gossip and how damaging that is. And then we go into deeper subjects which involve healthy relationships, sexual assault, sex education, and media literacy, and anything you think would represent being a healthy woman, we discuss.
Okay, so why were you called to develop this program? Because it is something you and I vibe up so clearly, because that's something that has always been my purpose in life, is to be an advocate for women. And so what called you into developing this program in the first place?
Probably like many women, when they have a daughter and they reflect upon their lives and what it means to now have a daughter of your own and what her life's going to be like. I would say that that's when it all started for me. And at the time, I dreamed of working in the wilderness with children. And then as my daughter grew, I got more involved in the rape crisis movement and health education, and realized that when it comes to sexual assault, there are a lot of things that could be educated to children ahead of time, and we could lower the statistics there. And so...
Really? So what's one of the things that you educate the girls about?
Healthy relationships, and we also have a workshop for boys. And I think that if we could teach our kids early on not only to respect each other, but how to communicate and ask for what we want, we might change things in the world for people.
Okay, so you're defining a healthy relationship as communicating what we want?
Yes.
And respecting each other?
Yes, and also saying what you don't want.
And saying what you don't want. That's a big one, because, well, when I was a teenager, and, if you said, no, really, I don't want to, I never got heard.
Right.
As a young developing woman, I did not get heard, and there was that place of then doubting yourself, right? Of, oh, well, then maybe I'm supposed to have to do these things that I just said I don't want to do.
Well, we're raised to please, and we're raised to nurture, and we're raised to take care of people.
Women are.
Yeah,
let's make that very clear.
Ahead of ourselves. And so a lot of times we put other people's needs in front of our own. And when we don't put other people's needs in front of our own, we're considered a bitch or selfish. And those are just not qualities people find attractive. And so
that was certainly lots of labels that I was given in my youth as I was attempting to stand up for myself.
Yeah, instead of being assertive or considered assertive, you were considered.
Right, you were considered, ugh. So, and what's interesting is the experience, and I'll just talk about it from my point of view,
Sure.
Tobi, but what I also know is that the pushing, which now we would label as bullying or sexual harassment, but in my youth it was like typical. It was like, come on, it's no brainer if the guy doesn't push you to do something that you don't want to do, in the peer pressure of all of it, because it's not just the guys, it was the girls, the girls that were.
Yeah, well, when talking about sexuality, boys and girls are raised so differently around sexuality. And boys are raised to go after what they want, and that they're not a real man unless they have multiple sexual partners and different things like that. And girls are raised to please, but also to stay innocent and not share your body. And
well, that has definitely changed, though, hasn't
Definitely,
it?
yeah.
Since I was a kid,
Yeah.
because now, and certainly in the music that you're listening to, I listen to, that the kids are listening to, there is this whole thing about. I'm not going to name her name, but there's somebody that has a very popular song out now, and it's all about how many relationships she has, and it's all a game, and let's just go play the game.
well, that's changed so dramatically because of media, and now women's value is wrapped up in their appearance and their sexuality. And so when you look at women leaders in the news, for example, they're just bashed about what they look like, what they're wearing, how old they look, do they have wrinkles, do they have a baby bump, different things like that. So women aren't valued for their accomplishments as much as they are.
Yeah, and you know what? That's almost because when I was a kid, it was all about the Barbie doll image, And I have red hair. I have bright red hair. I've always had bright red hair, and to be thinking that I'm supposed to look like the Barbie doll image, it used to just make me so angry because that wasn't real.
No.
But so it's almost the converse, or it's the same thing. It's just the same thing. And the media is all about selling to women because we're the major buyers.
86% of the buying power.
Right. What it is we're supposed to have, what we're supposed to look like in order to
be accepted, be successful,
get a man.
get a man.
Yep. Yeah,
Yes.
all that stuff. So in the empowerment workshop, then you're also talking about, that's part of the media image you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Of educating. But there's also these other components that you do. So let's talk about the self-injury. Let's talk about because there's so much going on now. Just on my radar, at least, it seems like the last 5 years where young women are cutting themselves, are hurting themselves. Prior to that, there was the whole, the eating disorders.
Right.
Now there's a physical, and I have a couple of young, now they're in high school, girls that I know that they did do cutting, and there was, their parents and I, we were like, okay, how do we deal with that? So how do you address that in the Girls Empowerment Group?
Most importantly, we raise awareness. And so we bring up the conversation so that there's not shame wrapped around it. And we're in no way experts in the area. So if we do come in contact with girls, which we do very often, who are engaging in self-injury or cutting, we refer them out to counselors or therapists in the schools. But mostly having the conversation around it to normalize it for the girls. And one thing we do have in our class is an anonymous question box. Mm-hmm. And so every day the girls can get up and submit a question in the box, and at the end of each class we answer any question that's in there. And we've been doing this will be our 9th year, and I've seen more questions about self-injury, suicide, and depression than I've ever seen in the past right now.
That's fascinating to me. Why do you suppose that is?
I personally believe it has a lot to do with social media, and there's so much pressure on girls in social media. There are apps where people can have beauty contests, for example. So Instagram, somebody can post 4 pictures of girls they go to school with. And then everyone votes who's the prettiest girl, who's the ugliest girl. And basically they X out. So then the next contest is 3 girls and then 2 girls. And then there's actually a, quote, winner of who wins this beauty contest. And then there's another app called ask.fm, which is anonymous. So people can ask questions, and anyone who wants to can answer those anonymously. And there's been girls in my classes who have had people say things to them anonymously. You should go kill yourself. You're so fat. If I see you on the beach, does that mean I've seen a beached whale? I'll tell you what, go cut yourself. I'm not kidding you. This is the girls, this is happening to them.
So all I want to know is how do you make that stop? I mean, how do you hit delete? How do you take those apps away? Who the hell?
Well, the most powerful thing you can do is not follow those people.
So you just turn them off your phone?
You just don't follow. It's called follow, unfollow. You just don't let them follow you. You give them power by answering. Even if you answer and say something like we're talking about violence and inner harmony and different things, well, you're creating violence by talking back to these people. So you're participating. You're participating. Don't participate.
Uh-huh.
And so as far as the girls are concerned, it's really hard to just say, don't participate. It's their life. Social media is part of young people's lives. Right. So you just have to have a conversation about it and empower people to create positive social media, do positive things on their social media. You can't take the social media away.
Right. I'm reminded about the shooting up in Isla Vista last May, and there was a young woman that did a hashtag post thing about something about the sexual assault, and it was about all women have been, or most women have been sexually abused or assaulted or harassed. And there was this huge wave against that young woman that posted all that, and then she had to take it down. But that was the truth. Most women, I would estimate 98%, have experienced some sort of sexual harassment from the time they were young. Not from, oh, wow, now I'm 21 and I get to be sexually harassed. No, from the time they were young.
Well, when we raise our girls and we say, don't dress like that, you're going to attract too much attention. Don't dress like that, something bad's going to happen to you. Oh, you got sexually assaulted. Well, what you were wearing? Why were you drinking? What we're doing is we're putting all the blame on the victim. Mm-hmm. And so it's giving permission to people to treat women that way.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So, and that doesn't, it continues on evidently, but the awareness that you're bringing to the group, to the girls. Now you work, because it's a workshop, this is a group of girls, and everybody gets to participate in the conversation if they want, right?
Yes.
So it's not you guys as the leaders of this workshop telling the girls what to think or do or be. It comes from within. It comes from their organic expression.
Yes, we're facilitating. We go in there with the information, the subject matter we're going to discuss. we bring in the information we have on that, and then we discuss it.
Well, okay, so Tobi, I want to go back to something you said at the beginning of this particular conversation about the depression and the cutting and everything. And you said we have the conversation to normalize it. Now, for our listeners, I want us to get clear on what that really means. It's to make it bring it into their awareness that this is happening, right?
Right. Definitely not
It's
to
not normal.
normalize cutting as if that's something that's acceptable.
Right.
Definitely not. But to normalize the conversation and normalize that you can talk about it.
Right, that it's
Make
okay to
this-
have the conversation.
Yeah. To actually, it's saying the word suicide is a really hard word to say.
Yeah.
Saying the word sexual assault is a really hard word to say. And so a lot of times people don't come forward if they're struggling with those. So normalizing, I mean, making the conversation comfortable.
You know, I was watching the Grammys this last weekend, and there was, I don't know if you caught it, but there was a statement. There was a young woman who was in the entertainment business who stood up on international television and talked about having been in an abusive relationship. And then Katy Perry sang a song addressing that, of how hard it is to get off the floor when you're in an abusive relationship like that, and to stand up for yourself. And I thought, that was so, as a woman, I was standing up cheering in the living room going, yes, because like you're saying, just to have the conversation about it takes the shame off of it, or lessens the shame.
Yeah. Can we remember a time in history when at the Grammys somebody got up and spoke about domestic violence? Can we remember a time in history when the president actually talked about sexual assault? These things haven't happened in the past. And so what's happening now is by normalizing the conversation, people can come forward and get help that they need.
Right.
And maybe change the statistics.
Right. And know that they have power.
Yes.
And the power to choose differently, to say, you know what, I'm not going to allow this anymore. And it takes a lot of guts, and it takes a lot of courage to stand up and say, you know what, this no longer serves me.
Right. Well, look at what's happening with the Bill Cosby case. How many women had to come forward?
Right.
What are there? 46 women who have
now.
come forward already, and if you look at the comments on any one of those articles, what are people saying to those women? They're shaming them. They're making them feel bad. They're questioning the legitimacy of everything. Why are you waiting so long to come forward? So it scares people. Why would you come forward if you're just going to get bashed like that?
Right. And your life will be turned upside down.
Yes.
Right. And thank God that there are women that are courageous enough now. And it seems to be courageous in numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's like one of the biggest wins you've gotten out of doing this girls empowerment? I know that you've got millions of them, but what's like a girl that stands out as a huge win?
The most exciting thing for me is when you have a girl in your class who might be in an unhealthy relationship, and maybe her mom is in an unhealthy relationship as well. So she's learning this all on her own, and some of the tools she's taken away from the workshop, and being able to apply those to her own relationship. And so when we discuss unhealthy relationships, we're not saying there's no hope. We're giving the girls tools, and that maybe their relationship isn't where they want it right now, but they can take these tools and improve upon it. And so one girl in particular brought these tools into her own teenage relationship.
Wow.
And her boyfriend actually worked on the tools with her, and they created a beautiful relationship together.
Oh my God, I got chills as you said that, Tobi.
I know, it's amazing. And so if we can raise kids, boys and girls, with these healthy communication skills, who knows what could happen in these relationships in the future?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And you have developed a boys integrity workshop.
Yes.
So can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the boys integrity workshop also covers the same outline. Basically, we go over all the same information, but boys have different things they want to discuss. And so,
like what? I can't even.
Well,
imagine.
for example, what it means to be raised as a boy and the expectations of being a boy. I know that this was all inspired by having a daughter, but a lot of my mindset changed when I had a son and realized what he was. For example, being confronted with in sports.
Yep.
If he cried.
Yep.
On the football field, he would get called. Can I say a bad word?
No, you can't, because
Okay.
Tom will be upset.
Okay. He would, what he'd get called.
Yeah.
And then if he cried.
You get called a girl.
Oh, God.
Stop being a girl.
How dare you call someone a girl? That's like the worst thing you can call a boy. So the boys program discusses a lot about masculinities and learning how to relearn all the emotions you used to be able to express as a young boy, which have been socialized out of you the older you get, to relearn how to properly express yourself in a healthy way.
My son, when my ex-husband wanted him to be in sports. You know, every dad wants their son to be a sports fanatic for some reason. And my son just wasn't a sports kid at that point. And he went into everything, soccer and baseball and basketball and blah, blah, blah. And I remember he was in Little League, and it was the worst experience of my entire life. Well, not the worst, but it was horrible because he would beg me, Mom, please, because they yell at everybody, and I don't want them yelling at me, and I don't like it when they yell at the other kids, and they're mean, and they're this and they're that, and I was like, oh boy. And you know, I would discuss it with my ex-husband, and the consensus was, you know, kind of against my inner stuff, is my son needed to continue to show up and finish the season.
He needed to man up.
Yep, man up.
Yeah.
And consequently, my son did not perform well. He was really good at pitching, but those coaches were so busy yelling at everybody that they didn't pay attention to any potentiality that could come out of the kids unless they were naturally athletic.
Yeah.
You know, if they were naturally athletic, those were the kids they focused on to push them to be better. But somebody like my son, who had abilities but wasn't being fostered, you know, he just hit under the radar. I won't do anything so I don't get attention, you know, they won't yell at me. And I just thought that's, you know, that was the last time he played baseball. I put my foot down. But, you know.
There's a really important documentary coming out in March, and it's called The Mask You Live In. And it's made by the same organization, the Representation Project, who made Misrepresentation, which was a documentary about women in media and leadership. And this is their version of that film for men. And it is awesome.
Yeah.
And we're going to be screening it in Ojai on March 22nd.
Are you really?
Yes.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah. So everyone needs to see that film.
Okay, so
coaches, fathers, anyone
where are you
who has
screening
boys.
it at?
Matilaha Junior High School.
Okay. And so let's just tap on this right now. You have a website.
Yes.
It's called the Girls Empowerment Workshop.com.
Yes.
Now, you'll post that information on there.
It's
yeah?
already on there.
Okay. Oh, I didn't see it this day. All right. So
it's under programs and activities.
Okay. So everybody, if you want to go see this documentary in March, make sure you check out the website and get up to Ojai and see it, because it's
an important film.
The other one you mentioned, Misrepresentation,
yes,
was an amazing.
And we may screen that again because it's just an amazing film.
It sounds like you should do a twofer, right?
Lots of popcorn and 2 movies.
Right. Yeah, that sounds good. So, yeah, you know what? I think we're going to take a short break.
Okay.
I'm talking to Tobi Jo Greene. We're talking about the Girls Empowerment Workshop, and you're listening to Living Your Inspired Life, and we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Susan Burrell from Living Your Inspired Life. I always find it easier and more fun to expand my life by being connected to open-hearted, like-minded people committed to being on the same path I am. If you feel the same way, I suggest you visit a Center for Spiritual Living. There are wonderful communities in Ventura, Ojai, Santa Barbara, Oxnard, Pleasant Valley, Camarillo, and Westlake Village. You'll find terrific people, great information, and more tools to help you live the life you were born to live. So go to csl.org to find a center near you. That's csl.org for a center near you.
Welcome back to Living Your Inspired Life. I'm Susan Burrell. And again, you can go to our website, livingyourinspiredlife.org, and find out more about all the good conversations we've been having, as well as what is up and coming in the future for Living Your Inspired Life. Hint, hint, wink, wink. So today I have the creator and passionate advocate of the Girls Empowerment Workshop, Tobi Jo Greene. Tobi, I'm loving the conversation we're having.
Me too.
So on break, we decided what we're going to talk about next, everybody. And so what I want to start with is you mentioned how women treat each other, and what the media is doing in terms of how women treat each other, promoting it. So speak a little bit more about that.
Okay. I think that the media portrays women a lot of the time as competitive, jealous, and that we're having cat fights. They have a lot of reality TV shows show the worst possible examples of how a human can act, especially women. And so I think that's what girls are watching. And
how frightening is that?
It's frightening.
I watched Gilligan's Island, and the big competitive thing was Marianne and Ginger, you know?
Well, and that's the thing. Who's the sexiest? Who's the prettiest? And so we go and treat each other determined by that.
So how do you deal with that with the girls then? I mean,
there's a really
besides
beautiful
pointing it
quote.
out, but-
Right, we talk about it. There's a really beautiful quote, and I hope I get this right on the air. When we blow out somebody else's candle, it does not make ours burn brighter.
oh,
And so we start the conversation with that quote, and what does that mean? And we break that apart. And then we also do an activity where we stand in a circle, and I'll say a statement, and if it pertains to you, you step to the center. And so it gives the girls the opportunity to see that they actually have more in common with each other than they thought. For example, I have somebody in my family who is an addict, and then the girls will step to the center. And so it's real life questions, and the girls who all go to school with each other might realize, wow, I didn't know that girl had that going on for her. And so I think we spend a lot of time judging without taking the time to realize there
Right.
might be something deeper going on
judging
there.
on the surface as opposed to taking the time to get to know what's going on underneath.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that seems to happen a lot. And it's interesting how the media, like you were saying, portrays women in this competitive fashion, when in my experience, while there is some competition, mostly in my experience, women want to work together. I mean, that's kind of our in our DNA, you know. I mean, it goes back to the old quilting circles, you know, or everybody gets together to bake bread to give to the community and or help in a birth or
Yeah, I think naturally we want to see each other happy and successful. I don't think this is a natural state. Maybe back when, I guess there's a philosophy that it goes back to when we were cave people and we had to fight to survive by holding on to the man, and the way to do that was to be attractive to this man. And I just don't believe in that. I just don't think
I don't think that's, I'm shaking my head here. No, not buying
No,
it.
I think that we want to empower each other, and when we empower each other, we empower ourselves.
Yeah. And that radiates out into
Yes.
the community, because if we stand as self-empowered individuals, then it models that for other people.
The girls are watching. The younger girls are watching us, how we treat each other, how we carry ourselves.
Wow. Okay. So then let's dip into this other conversation that goes back to the self-abuse and suicide, because I have a couple of in my family. I have a niece whose boyfriend committed suicide right after walking out of her house, and the recovery from that, it's been about 4 years now this year, and her recovery, there's a part of her she's never going to recover from that. So let's talk a bit about the suicide thing.
I think the most important thing to remember about suicide is that we have to talk about it. It's a really hard word to say, and if somebody in your life you think might be suicidal, that's probably the hardest question you're ever going to have to ask them.
Yeah.
Are you suicidal?
Yeah.
Are you thinking about killing yourself? I think we have to talk about it.
So in having to talk about it, okay, what if that person isn't straight up with you? What if you think that's going on from other clues they've dropped, but they don't want to be straight up with you? Then how do you help them? What do you do?
I think it would be perfectly okay to talk to a trusted adult and go let somebody know your concerns. If you're a student and you're in school, you can leave anonymous notes with your counselors. I don't think you should stay silent about it. And we talk about this a lot in class, that say you have a friend who's confided in you that they might be suicidal, but they say, please don't tell anyone.
Yeah, which happens all the time.
Happens all the time. And so you might lose this friendship by telling someone, but in turn, you may have saved that person's life. So
Right. So then
you have to take a risk and let somebody know.
So that sounds like calling forward a lot of courage within these young women.
Yeah. And you don't have to play detective. If you find yourself feeling this way, then just reach out and ask for help with it. You know, if you think your friend might be depressed or engaging in self-injury or suicidal, just go find some help and talk to somebody.
So on the converse of that, Tobi, how do you encourage a young woman who is feeling suicidal and depressed to really get that they're... Here's what I want to say about that. Having been in that place myself when I was younger, how do you get them to recognize that they're not the only one in that boat, that there's many people that feel that way at certain places and times in life?
Well, I think by having somebody like you come into the class and talk about it to the girls, somebody who has survived feeling that way, reading the anonymous questions, and you have 5 girls in a class that are discussing suicide. The one girl who thought she was alone now can realize she's not.
Right.
Having workshops and conversations available to the girls where they can discuss this. And the conversation we were talking about earlier, where if you talk about it and someone's listening, maybe that might trigger them asking for help.
Right, right. Yeah, when I teach classes and stuff, I encourage people, because it's always the one person that finally asks the question, there's at least 5 people in the room that had the same question.
Definitely. That's why the anonymous question box is so powerful.
That's awesome.
Because you can't ask, you can, but how rare it is for somebody to ask those questions.
Right,
in front
and
of
if
everyone.
they hear it not coming from an adult voice, but
Yeah.
from what they think is their peer group, that's
Yeah.
got to be more powerful.
Well, and we do that. So we have a mentorship group, and these are the girls that have already gone through the Girls Empowerment Workshop but still want to be involved, which there's a lot of them. We'll have them come back for the junior high school girls as mentors and answer the anonymous questions for them.
Oh.
So rather than us as the facilitators always answering them, now we have a younger generation answering the questions, which is really powerful.
So, and let's talk again, because let's talk about sexual assault too,
Okay.
because it's the same thing. It's hard to say to somebody, I've been raped or I've been brutalized, and on break you were even saying it's hard for the young men to come forward. So let's speak a bit about that.
Well, if someone comes to you and says they've been sexually assaulted or molested, your only job is to believe them. And again, your job is not to play detective and to decide whether you believe them or not. And number 2, your job is to tell them that it was not their fault. And those are the 2 easiest things to remember. I believe you, and it's not your fault. And then go from there and let the person who's telling you this guide the conversation. Be a listening person, a supportive person.
Right. So deep listening.
Yes.
I notice that there are oftentimes people want to fix a scary thing like that. Well, here, let me tell you what you're supposed to do, instead of just sitting and being present with the individual and allowing them to speak until they're done and just listening. And listening means, I'm just going to say this, listening means really listening, and not listening with the yeah, but, and, or when they're done talking, I'm going to tell them what I think. No, you just listen with a quiet mind and an open heart.
Listen so that if they asked you what they just said, you could repeat it.
Yeah. That's powerful.
Yeah.
And that means that the person's feeling seen and heard,
Yeah.
and then they can be more open.
And you're not going to fix it. Even if you yourself have been sexually assaulted, your experience may be different from theirs. And the way you healed might be different. And so it's really important to let the person who's a victim of sexual assault to decide, with some guidance, go get some therapy, go to a rape crisis center, find somebody to speak to. But they're in charge of that.
So how often do the parents get called in to those, if somebody in the workshop, if a young woman in the workshop says, I've been raped, how do you handle that as a facilitator with the parents?
Well, 99% of the time we get this information through the anonymous question box. So we're just providing information and resources. If a girl who is under the age of 18 comes to me and says that's happening, then I am required to go to the school counselor and report this to Child Protective Services.
Yeah.
But if you're over 18 and you've been sexually assaulted, it's up to you whether you want to report it or not.
Right. Okay, so now talking about school counseling. So this is the exciting thing about the Girls Empowerment Workshop, is you are now moving into the school system. So share about that.
We have been working, originally we started in the Oakview Park and Resource Center, and we had a group of 11 girls. And originally the program was designed to take the girls into the wilderness and teach all of this information.
Okay,
And then,
wait a minute.
Oh, yeah.
Take them into the wilderness.
Yes.
I'm thinking you're sitting in a room.
We were originally. Okay, so the program was designed to be a wilderness program because my background is in wilderness and environmental education.
Okay, so when you say wilderness, is it going for like a nice...
Backpacking, like
Oh,
Sespe.
crud. Okay.
So I realized that as wonderful as that is, the program seemed to work better in the schools, and more girls could join in the schools, and more girls felt more comfortable doing that. So now we wrap up some of our workshops by going on a camp out or a wilderness trip, but all of the workshops now take place in the schools.
I see.
So either as a 4-credit elective or an after-school program. And it seems
that's
to work really
awesome.
well. The schools have really embraced this program.
Okay, so now what schools are you in besides...
Chaparral in Ojai, Nordhoff High School, Ojai Valley School, Oak Park Independent Study, Oxnard, where we've now joined forces with a charter system called Learn for Life Charter Schools, and they're based out of Lancaster, but they have 65 plus locations throughout California, and now we're incorporating the program throughout their schools. So it's a really powerful program to be in schools.
Right.
Even though schools are addressing a lot of these subjects, this is all a lot of different subjects all in one.
Right, and it's a consolidated 10-week program. So
Right.
there's a commitment to showing up for 10 weeks
Yes.
to really learn the material and to really be expressed into it.
Yeah. And we'll be having a workshop in Ventura probably in the spring. And that'll be for anybody who is junior high age. And then the program in Ojai for junior high age, we have probably 80 girls each session for that class.
And that also goes through the Ojai Valley Youth Foundation. Right?
The Ojai Valley Youth Foundation has been our umbrella, like our fiscal umbrella in the Ojai Valley.
Okay, awesome. So the thing I loved when you shared with me about this whole charter school thing is that your program that you've developed and been passionate about is, in my mind, going viral. And I think it's awesome that it's going to be a place where girls can get sourced and supported and like you said, cultivating empowerment and assertiveness and all that stuff. It's
really exciting. Ideally, all this conversation would happen at home with our family, but it doesn't. And if it does, you're in a really lucky family. And so I think that it's our responsibility as a community to provide this information to our kids.
Yeah, that goes back to the Season for Nonviolence, where it is part of a community mandate. If you really look within yourself, we are part of a human family.
Yeah.
And even though we have individual families, it's the human family that we eventually go out into the world in, right? And so to go out into the world empowered, or at least knowing the truth about who you are as an individual, is so important, because then you have opportunity to really find what sources you not only financially but in your soul, and what connects you to other individuals of like-mindedness, so you can do some amazing, profound, transformative work in the world.
Yeah. If we feel safe and whole, we can do bigger work.
Yeah.
And so that would be great if these girls could walk away from the program feeling that way.
Yeah. Now, can they go back? I mean, it starts at the junior high level and the high school level. Can they go back as many times as they want?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not like you go through 10 weeks and
No.
then you get a certificate and you're good to go.
Yeah, no way. You come back the next year and something we talk about stands out more than it did the year before. Something's more relevant than it was the year before.
Oh.
So we have a lot of girls repeat the program for 2-3 years.
And then they come back as mentors, you said?
Yes.
That's phenomenal. So what else, Toby? Let's talk about the sex ed part, because I think that is something that they're not necessarily getting. I know when I didn't get it.
Well, sex education, comprehensive sex education is required in the state of California. So students are getting sex education. But from what I've gathered from the girls, what's missing is just more of a comprehensive conversation about sex in general, your emotions, what's going on, your choices involved in it. A lot of sex education programs are based around the idea that let's tell our kids not to have sex. Let's teach them abstinence only. And so it's a very scary thing, because of course we don't want our teenagers to go have sex. That's a scary thought for a parent. But it's statistically shown that if they have comprehensive sex education, they actually wait longer to engage in sex for the first time. And so if we don't teach sex education, we're setting our kids up to have unprotected, unsafe, non-consensual sex. And I don't think that is a disservice to our kids.
Well, it certainly has been up until now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, all the teenage pregnancies probably occur out of that experience of not knowing that I have a choice, not knowing that I don't have to say yes. You know?
I have girls in my 7th and 8th grade class who have asked in the anonymous question box, how do I get pregnant? So by 7th or 8th grade, some girls are already having sex and some girls don't know how to protect themselves. So by providing this kind of information, we're not telling people to go have sex. We're saying, when you do, how do you know if you're ready? Do you know where to go to get tested? Do you know where to go? Have you discussed with your partner whether you're ready? What's comfortable for you? What's not comfortable? What are your boundaries? What are your limits? Can you have this conversation? There's a million things to ask.
That is such a large adult conversation in my mind, Toby, that,
Yeah, well, we practice. We have role plays in class, and we practice our communication skills, and we discuss the difference between what's passive communication, what's aggressive communication, what's passive-aggressive communication, and then our goal is assertive communication.
Okay, so will you delineate those, like give an example of each of those things? And I'm just asking for me.
Yeah. Well, passive communication would be somebody feeling that your needs are more important than my own.
Uh-huh.
Aggressive would be, my needs are more important than yours.
Uh-huh.
Passive aggressive would be, you're not really going to know how I feel, but I'm going to be sarcastic and this is going to be uncomfortable. And then assertive would be, I respect you, but I also respect me. And this is how I feel and this is what I want. And to be comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm. That's a hard thing, at least in my generation.
Oh, it's hard for every age. Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
I'm 50-something learning how to be assertive.
Oh,
you know,
me
and say,
too,
this
still.
is what I want and this is what I think. And you
Yeah.
don't have to agree with me or, you know, in anything.
Well, women do this a lot. We minimize ourselves. So we'll say something that's important to us, and then we'll say something like, does that make sense to you? Is that okay? Instead of just saying what we feel and being comfortable enough to just let that go and trusting the other person to receive it and respond, and trusting the other person to have enough strength and courage to respond honestly.
Well, that also sounds like there's an assumption there that if I say it nicely, then they'll hear me.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's not even being heard because it's said from a place of meekness or submissiveness.
Yeah. Or passive aggressive.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't even get heard. It just flies over the radar.
Yeah. So we really have to practice. One of the practicing ways the girls go away from the workshop is, so girls are they say sorry a lot.
Oh my
Even if we
goodness.
don't mean it, we say sorry a lot. So the girls are taught, instead of saying sorry, let's practice the word excuse me. And it might be really uncomfortable at first, but say you're in a grocery store and you bump into somebody and your natural reaction would be sorry. Your homework is to walk away and say, excuse me. And every time, and all of a sudden, that actually becomes your language. So it's just like a sport. Whatever you practice, you get better at.
I can't even tell. I used to play tennis. I hopefully I'm going back to it. But I remember with women, right? And I remember if somebody hit the ball slightly out of the court, everybody was like, sorry.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking,
And you're in a competitive sport and you're apologizing. Yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to hit it there. Well, of course you did.
Yeah. So I guess in that circumstance, you could be practicing assertiveness by saying, take that, or yes, I did it, or whatever, but just change the language.
Yeah. And so, but it also sounds like you're empowering the girls to be assertive, but not in a place where it's an aggressive.
No.
It's, this is who I am.
Yeah. Nobody wins in aggressive communication.
No. So do you see a pendulum swing when you're doing this? Are there some girls that have to really like go beyond to push their own envelope?
Oh,
Are you following what
definitely.
I'm saying?
Some of this is very hard, just like it would be if you think about all the adult women you know. Some people it would be really hard for, even as adults.
Yeah.
And then some people it just comes naturally.
I have a couple of friends. We have breakfast every 2 weeks, and we support each other in what's going on in our lives. And it's always fascinating, the three of us, when one of us talks about ourselves, how we diminish ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
And the other two sit there with our mouths are hanging onto the table, dropped onto the table, and we're looking at this person as they diminish themselves right in front of us when we can see how powerful they are. So it's been a wonderful opportunity for all of us to reflect back to each other. This is who you are.
Right.
Can you look in this mirror that I'm holding up for you and see how powerful and creative and
That's
precious
wonderful.
you are? Yeah. But it takes a willingness to be with other people that can reflect you, but receiving that reflection too.
Yeah. And by being okay with, you know what, sometimes you're going to take up space and sometimes you're going to take up somebody's time, and that's okay. And so I have two really good friends I hike with, and that's like our therapy sessions.
Yeah.
And afterwards, if one or the other spoke what we consider too much, we always call each other and we're like, I'm so sorry that I talked the whole time. I'm sure you had things to say.
Excuse me.
Right. So now we have an agreement that we don't apologize anymore. Like if you're the one that's talking, you obviously needed it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I've led numerous support groups for women over the years, and it is a lot of that where there will be one person that quote unquote monopolizes the conversation, but it always is because either that was what they needed to unburden, or they were speaking something that somebody else in the group needed to hear.
Definitely. And if we have that in the class, and sometimes that does happen to where the other girls start to get distracted, sometimes we have to redirect the conversation, and that's fine. But sometimes if somebody needs to talk, that might be their only outlet.
Right, their
And
only
so we
opportunity.
allow it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's a hard balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for you, Tobi, and everything that's happening with the empowerment workshop, what do you see is happening next for you?
I feel like it's time for me to practice more of what I'm preaching and become more confident. Even getting ready for this radio show, I was nervous. Whenever I'm put in the spotlight or asked questions about it, I get nervous. And so I'm really practicing.
I got to say, well, honey, welcome to the spotlight because it's your time. It totally is your time. This stuff, this information. When did you start this program? Because it's been around
if I
for a
look
while.
back in this actual program, the Girls Empowerment Workshop started in 2006.
Okay, so it's been around for a while.
But it was in my journals since way back.
For forever.
Forever. Yeah.
Right,
So it's been something I've been working on probably my entire life,
Mm-hmm.
and then finally was able to have some support. I brought it to Barbara Kennedy at the Oakview Park and Resource Center, and I said, I have this idea. I don't know if it'll work, but what do you think? I want to do this program for girls. And she's like, do it. And from there, it's just grown each year.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And so it really does just take stepping out of your comfort zone, presenting something to somebody.
Which is the truth for anyone about anything, that whatever that urge is within
Oh
us.
my gosh, just listen.
Yeah. Listen and then be willing to take action steps towards it.
And don't think it's going to happen overnight. Just keep going.
Well, this is almost, I mean, if it really actually started in 2006, you're getting ready to hit your 10-year mark.
Yes.
And look at all these amazing things that are happening to crest that 10-year mark.
It's very exciting.
Yeah. And this whole thing about listening to yourself, which is what self-empowerment is. It's listening to the truth of who am I? Or it's not even, lots of us don't even know what the truth is within ourselves because we're so busy doing in the doing world thing, getting the to-do list done, and
So busy.
so busy, and we're not in the beingness of our lives. To really ask the question, who am I?
Right.
And who am I
Spend
now?
more time doing that and less time comparing ourselves to others and less time judging others.
Yeah.
Just what is true for you? What do you want to do?
How do you teach the girls not to compare?
We
that's a
had
big one.
We had an amazing guest speaker, Russell Kuhn. We have never had a man guest speaker in the class, but one time we did. And he owns Evergreen Wellness up in Ojai. And he created an activity for the girls, and it was about values. And they rated their values in order. And after deciding what your values are in what order, he taught the girls, so now look at the person's values next to you. They're in a different order. So when you're talking to this person, you're coming from your value set. When you're judging this person, you're coming from your value set. And so I've adopted that into the class. And it's been really powerful to really know that when you are looking at somebody else, you're coming from what you consider to be the most important values. If you don't consider financial stability or success to be important, but somebody next to you is, and you're judgmental about that, you might think somebody's materialistic. But what it really means for that person is a house over their head or nice clothing. So you have to be really careful where you're judging each other.
That's brilliant because
I loved this activity.
It's because I'm talking about me again.
That's okay.
But I used to, and I still do, kind of go, oh, well, it makes sense to me, so how come it doesn't make sense to you?
Right.
My values make perfect sense to me, so why aren't you operating according to my values, Tobi?
Yeah, maybe we can take this activity to Congress.
Hey, boy, wouldn't that be good? Yeah, because that's where everything becomes polarized.
Yeah.
If you don't have my values,
Right. We're going to have a problem.
yeah, it's very divisive, and that's the whole judgment and comparison thing.
Yeah. And so that's something I think we all have to work on, no matter how old we are or
and
wherever
it's
we're at.
continual because
Yes.
it's easy to fall into a complacency of thinking, well, I know what's right, so therefore what's right for me should be right for everybody. I think when people get an opportunity to travel around the world, or even just travel to a different state in our country, you can see where there are cultural differences, that the value systems are set up slightly differently. Nothing right, nothing wrong about it. It's just different, and to notice that, and then we can talk about inclusivity, because on Living Your Inspired Life, what we promote is that we are all connected. We are all connected in the heart center. We are all one. And therefore, if you buy into that premise, hello, I do, I'm raising my hand. If you really believe that, which I do, hello, then there isn't anybody against me. We're all in this together, and there's just slight degrees of differences of perspective or expression or values, like you said. And when I can be in those places of accepting that is okay, then I don't find that there's somebody I need to judge, or or my judgment lessens.
And you're also much less defensive, because presenting all of the information that I have in the Girls Empowerment Workshop, I've gotten into some pretty heated debates with people, and I would find myself getting really defensive. And rather than being defensive, I'm learning how to just communicate, really find out where people are coming from instead.
Yeah, I think that what you just shared about feeling defensive when you're sharing something, that's part of I see that as part of how human beings learn. I think this, I'm going to go out into the world and say, this is what I think. And then you get feedback, right? Reverberation. Oh, no, yes, no, yes, no. But it's being in that place of flexibility. I just posted this on Living Your Inspired Life Facebook page because I was having a conversation with my two friends the other day about elasticity versus flexibility. And I'm beginning to contemplate that concept of elasticity, because that means that there's this place where you can expand and contract, and it's never broken. Like if you think of rubber band, you can stretch it and then it returns to itself, and you stretch it and it returns to yourself, as opposed to flexibility, which kind of is, you can be flexible but only to a point, and then you can
that's interesting.
You can do yoga and be as flexible as you want,
or not.
And then there'll be places where you can only flex so far, and then you're going to break something. But this idea of elasticity, in my mind, it gives me more space to explore my outer limits.
And with elastic,
limits.
the longer you use it, it stretches further.
Right.
So that's...
Yeah. So, So the place of finding a way to not compare and not judge, for me, I'm going to start seeing it as, instead of being flexible, because that was my mantra for a while, because I was really in control of everything, and I was in control of my life, and then everything broke apart, and then I went, all right, I have to be fluid, I have to be flexible. But now this thing, as my life is coming back into a sense of order. Elasticity, so I can continue to stretch and grow, and yet I get to still come back to my center and the truth of who I am and my life. So, so I just want to drop that in.
Yeah, no, that reminds me too of the ability to work with other people, and that's something that I struggled with, because I have a really dear friend who has donated so much time to this program. And at first I had a power struggle with her, totally on my part. And so over the years, I've learned that she has so much to teach and so much to offer the program. It wouldn't be where it is today without her support. And so that was something I had to learn.
Yeah, it sounds
to
like
work with others.
Right, and collaborate.
Yes,
the
it's
collaboration
really
part, which takes out the competition piece, right?
Yeah.
If we can move the idea of competition into collaboration, then there's that. Then that's the elastic circle in a way.
And now we're a great team. And
Awesome.
Her name's Shannon.
Shannon, hey Shannon. I know Shannon. All right, so the website is thegirlsempowermentworkshop.com. There is at least one documentary that's coming up in March.
We actually have a series of documentaries, and so we've already shown 2. March 22nd is the next one, and they'll be once a month on Sunday evenings through June. And then in June, we're going to try to do a few outdoor films in Libby Park.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we want to just keep the movies going.
Yeah. So, okay. Are you going to repeat like you said?
We might, but there's so many documentaries on this subject matter. We're just going to keep them going.
Awesome. So you know what, Toby? Make me aware when it comes up for the summer series, and we'll tap on it on Living Your Inspired Life again. So
awesome. Thank you.
Everybody can get up to Ojai and see it.
Yeah.
I'll be there.
Okay. I expect you there.
Yeah. All right. Anything else as we begin to close out?
I just want to say thank you for believing in this program and having me come answer some questions. I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I have to say I have chills. I from the moment I heard about this program, when I first moved to Ojai, I was like, and I have a son. And there wasn't the Boys Integrity program at that particular point, and I really wanted him to go into the empowerment thing. So I am deeply grateful for the work that you do in the world and in Ojai. So with that being said, I'm going to say, and so it is, namaste.
Namaste.